As the cliche goes, April showers bring May flowers. But usually what comes after is the heat and dryness of summer. Hello again, SA here. And before the hot weather of the holiday shows up, you should indulge in my new short story, The White Cat, a free exclusive on Substack. The links are down below in description. Join Margot Thompson, a beautiful stage actress and recent widow who finds salvation in the form of a white cat during a night of terror. While checking out my oddball thriller, remember that my Glitch series is still available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The links are down below in the description. While you'll find my peculiar story about a white pussy entertaining, that doesn't mean I'm out of ideas. I still have more stories coming down the pike, so as long as I don't run into any mishaps, you'll see those stories as well. Now let's get back to the video. Hello again, SA here. Anyone who's ever played the game Monopoly probably knows how the game works. In other words, you throw your dice, and as long as you don't land in jail, and as long as you play your P's and Q's right, you can pretty much buy your property on the board. But the thing is, Monopoly is more than just an old board game by Milton Bradley. It's also a type of business philosophy. Indeed, the first time it was ever mentioned was by Aristotle in his book Politics, where he chastised a particular businessman. I think his name was Thais. Supposedly he had had garnered the lion's share of the olive press market. So there you go. And indeed, there's been other various monopolies throughout human history, such as the Salt Commission, which existed in China back in the 8th century AD. And that lasted for a very long time before, of course, the revolution. And indeed, there was another organization that existed in France. I think it was called Gabel. Yeah, supposedly it was set up back in the 13th century to regulate the cost of salt. And it resulted in like really high, really ridiculous tax on salt in France. And that tax lasted until about the middle 20th century. And of course, anyone who knows anything about American history knows that we have problems with monopolies here. I mean, anyone who's familiar with old John D., Rockefeller and Standard Oil, yeah. But he wasn't the only one. Yeah, J.P. Morgan and Carnegie, they set up U.S. Steel. Yeah, that was a monopoly. And, anyone's ever been to a damn, in the market for a diamond ring? Definitely knows who De Beers is. Oh yeah, definitely a monopoly. No joke. But of course, some people didn't like these monopolies and tried to basically put them out of business. And that's where antitrust comes in. Oh yeah. Because antitrust, if I remember correctly, started during the Gilded Age. Yeah. I can't remember if it started under McKinley or before him. But I knew it was sometime in the late Gilded Age. But yeah. Believe me, when the federal government started talking about breaking up these monopolies, damn, these business tycoons, man, they weren't feeling that at all. No way. And yet, despite their best efforts, indeed, there's a famous cartoon called Bosses of the Senate from the late 19th century. It's a funny cartoon. I've seen it, where it shows these big money bags sitting in the back of the Senate building, and they all basically represent various trusts, such as the oil and gas and steel industry and the paper industry, and they basically are signaling to the reader that, yeah, those are people who really control the Senate, these big corporations. And of course, some of you are saying, well, hey, nothing much has changed. Okay, I'll concede that. But back in the 19th century, during the Gilded Age, it was blatant. But eventually, slowly but surely, they started dismantling these trusts. Such as, I think of the first one, I think it was called the Sherman Act. That was in the late 19th century. And then it was followed by two more, strangely enough, under Woodrow Wilson, who I'm not going to get into his history, but there you go. Yeah, one was called the Federal Trade Commission, which still exists today, and I think it's called the Clayton Act. Yeah. And so far, their history of breaking up these organizations is kind of spotty. Yeah, they were successful at breaking up Standard Oil, but they took on other companies, and they weren't so successful. Like, for example, the NFL. And you say, wait, what? Yeah, there was a lawsuit brought back in the 80s against the NFL by the United States Football League. And you know who owned a piece of that? Old Trump. You say, oh, him? Yeah. Lawsuit didn't succeed, but hey, the guy made a go for it. But anyway, this video is not so much about previous incidents of monopolies and efforts to break them up. This is about the here and now. Now, old Tim Pool, he has a video right now talking about one of the biggest uncompetitive organizations that's running around right now. I think you may have heard of them. Yeah, in fact, you see their logo every time you turn on your computer. You know, Google. Yeah, those guys. Okay, now you ready? Here we go.
We've got this from the New York Times. Google stock falls as government weighs breaking up the company. This is big. We need to get a better source, but we've got to talk about what's currently going on. The New York Times source, let me get a better one for you, Google breakup, and get the finer details, because that was an audio thing, I think. Here we go. This is the right source. U.S. said to consider a breakup of Google to address search monopoly. The DOJ said, and state attorneys general are discussing various scenarios to remedy Google's dominance in online search, including breaking up the company. You hear that, Google? You know what's funny is that Google's a beast, a behemoth. I don't think there's any one person right now watching at YouTube, and I know they are watching. I don't think there's any one person watching who actually has enough authority to do anything about this, nor care. It's funny because we have a bunch of different Google connections. Google Ads, YouTube, of course. What is it? There's ancillary Google companies that are like, I've got connections with Google News, and they're all different companies. So it's funny because someone from the ads side was like talking to us. And then I asked someone from the YouTube side about what we're doing with ads, and they're like, I have no idea. I don't know how any of that works. And I'm like, you guys have Google email addresses. You don't work at the same company? And they're like, yeah, we basically don't. Like, that guy's probably in an entirely other country or something. The New York Times says Google was found last week to have violated antitrust laws by illegally maintaining a monopoly on internet search. Now discussions over how to fix those violations have begun. Justice Department officials are considering what remedies to ask a federal judge in order to order against the search giant, said three people with knowledge of the deliberations involving the agency and state attorneys general who helped bring the case. They are discussing various proposals, including breaking off parts of Google, such as its Chrome browser or Android smartphone operating system, two of the people said. Other scenarios under consideration include forcing Google to make its data available to rivals, or mandating that it abandon deals that made its search engine the default option on devices like the iPhone. Said the people who declined to be identified because the process is confidential. The government is meeting with other companies and experts to discuss their proposals for limiting Google's power, the people said. The deliberations are in their early stages. Judge Amit P. Mehta of U.S. District Court for D.C., who is overseeing the case, has asked the DOJ and Google to come up with a process for determining a fix by September 4th. He has scheduled a hearing on September 6th to discuss the next steps. Last week's ruling that Google was a monopolist was a landmark antitrust decision, raising serious questions about the power of tech giants in the modern internet era. Apple, Amazon, and Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, also face antitrust cases. Google is scheduled to go to trial in another antitrust case, this one over ad technology, next month. Any remedies in Google's search case are likely to reverberate and influence that broader landscape. The stakes are actually high for Google, which became a $2 trillion internet juggernaut by building an online advertising business and others on top of its search engine. Judge Mehta could reshape the core of the company's business or order it to abandon longtime practices that have helped to cement its dominance. Google generated $175 billion in revenue from its search engine and related businesses last year. The DOJ is evaluating the court's decision. A spokesman for the agency said in a statement, no decisions have been made at this time. The Google spokesman declined to comment. The company has pledged to appeal the ruling. Bloomberg News early reported the details of the discussion. Remedies in antitrust cases can have profound effects. In 2000, a federal judge ruled against Microsoft in an antitrust case and ordered the company to be split up. A breakup was reversed on appeal, but key legal findings were upheld. Afterward, Microsoft did not exert its dominance over the emerging internet industry, creating room for young companies like Google to thrive. The Justice Department and a group of states brought the search lawsuit against Google in 2020. It went to trial last year alongside a second similar lawsuit brought by a different group of state attorneys general. On August 5th, Judge Mehta ruled that Google had illegally maintained a monopoly over general online search services and some of the ads that run in search results. Their stock is falling. They've got some crazy ideas, but we will see. This is massive, ladies and gentlemen. The end of Google is going to reshape the political landscape as we know it. First, let me tell you a story. I knew a guy. I don't know what he sold. He sold like knickknacks or something. And his whole business was online sales. And he made a good living. One day, Google decided to change the algorithm. And all of a sudden, his website didn't appear in search anymore. Everything he had built up to generate proper search engine optimization was gone. His sales evaporated. That was it. That to me is insane. And we cannot have an economy that functions that way. Back in the olden days, you'd buy a piece of real estate. Let's say you buy a property in an empty field. 20 years later, residential developments are popping up. 10 years later, massive urban buildings are popping up. There's stores all around. And here's your little store in a prime location. Your revenue is dramatically increased. Your building's improved. You've got several children. They're running the store now. And you're like, this is it. Now imagine with the internet, you set up online. You sell a product most people don't know or care about. How about 50 caliber pens? I got one over here. It's a 50 caliber bullet, but it's actually a pen. You pull the pen out. Let's say you're selling those. No one else is selling them. So you got prime real estate. People search for it. They find you on Google. They buy your product. You're making a living. A year goes by, and this real estate, gone. Google comes in and says, we're changing the algorithm. You're out. Imagine if someone set up a shop in a barren field, that developments came around, and then one day the government came and said, we are forcing your shop to go far, far away. You're going to be like, whoa. We've been here for a long time. We built this business. We have foot traffic. That's how we sustain it. And they say, no. We're moving your business to a barren wasteland. You'd be done. It'd be the end. You'd have nothing. That's what's happening with Facebook, with Google, and these other platforms. With YouTube. You know, there are people who built YouTube channels, followed the rules completely, and then YouTube sabotages those channels for political reasons. And then people end up losing their livelihoods. So I warn people all the time. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. Several years ago, when we started Timcast IRL, for instance, 100%, well, okay, it's an exaggeration. It's about 95% of the revenue for the company was YouTube ad revenue. That's it. I'd take a look at YouTube, see how much money in ads we were getting from the clips and the videos and the live streams, and I'd be like, that's how much money we're making. And it was insane. And then I thought about it. If we get banned, it goes to zero. And at the time, I only had like 2 employees or whatever, so it was just basically me. And I was like, okay, we need to build something else. So I started posting to Spotify and iTunes, the podcast platforms, and started the website, timcast.com. And it was fairly rudimentary, but it was like, be a member. And instantly, we got to the point where we had offset that risk. Google as a monopoly is a nightmarish thing to consider. It is like living in communist China and running a business. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Google, it's like having the Chinese Communist Party come and just say, we are destroying your business to build a highway, and there's nothing you can do about it. Worse still is how it affects politics, and this is going to be massive. Google interferes in politics 100%. We saw this with Dr. Robert Epstein, who's talked about how Google, Facebook, and other platforms can control algorithms to benefit Democrats, and that Google's actively flipping votes. Actively. That means he basically has described it as, if you search for Trump, you get Kamala. You search for Kamala, you get Kamala. Look what Kamala Harris's campaign is doing now. You search for a news story, Kamala bought ads that Google allows where she changes the headline of a news story to make it look like the news favors her. That's what Google is doing. If Google gets broken up, this could rupture the ability for YouTube to function properly. YouTube, of course, being subsidized. The search on Google is going to be interesting because YouTube is the second largest search engine for videos. How this ends up, my friends, I cannot say. What I can tell you is we know the machine is rigged. So I don't see how this plays out in a way that ultimately does make it better for us. My concern is that the breaking up of Google will simply be to the betterment of the establishment and the deep state. They say, oh, geez, we've had to split the ad company and the search company, so now it's all split up. That means YouTube ad revenue is gone. YouTube then says, we're going to start charging. What happens when YouTube says, we're going to start charging for bandwidth? If you put up a video, you got to pay. Do you know how much it would cost? Google subsidizes this, and I understand it. Understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Right now in this live stream, we're live here in the morning, 10 a.m., come hang out. About 25,000 people watching. Upload rate is probably around 6 or 7 megabits per second. Multiply that by 25K. That's how much it costs to do a live stream when you're not on YouTube, one of these big platforms. In the early days of live streaming mobile, going to like Ustream and these other companies that we'd say like, what's the rate for streaming? They say, boom, it's going to be 30 grand. And you're like, what? Google could then come out and say, we're going to have to charge a flat rate for anybody who wants a channel. And you'd be thinking, no way, that would hurt YouTube too much. No. They're going to get the same amount of views. They already have siloed off independent voices, deleted their channels, made it harder and harder to find. And anybody who's already got their business operating on YouTube will pay the fee. They'll say $3,000 per month per channel. And then for us, we're going to have to spend like, $15,000 to $20,000 to maintain that. And that's on top of the money that we're already losing to invest in new channels. But we can afford it because we have memberships. Big corporations can afford it because they're big corporations. But new channels will never exist. There will be no more user-generated content. That's my concern. Let me show you this from The Guardian. You know who else should be on trial for the far rights, for the UK's far-right rights? Elon Musk. Ex-Twitter chairman sues X for $20 million. Elon Musk's, well, this one's a different story, but they're calling for Elon Musk's arrest. How do they frame the news against Elon Musk for X? What has he done? Open up the platform, activated monetization, one of the coolest things ever for people on X, one of the smartest things. Now you can make money. And they try to destroy it and burn him down. They lost control of that system. Now you're looking at YouTube. Why would they make it better for independent voices? I don't know that they would. Consider that.
All right, you saw that. Now, as I said, just because you file a lawsuit against some of these outfits doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win in the courts. Indeed, according to the official law, when it comes to antitrust, if I remember correctly, there was a term that they used that refers to the whole motivation of antitrust, and the term was, I think it was called reason. I think I got it right. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Where supposedly that was the primary motivation behind breaking up these businesses, because they felt that you can't have a proper, capitalist economy if you only have like one company running everything, you know, like it was in the past. And indeed, anyone who is familiar with AT&T probably remembers that at one time AT&T pretty much ran all the phones. In fact, back then in the past, back when I was a kid, it was simply called the Bell system. And anyone who was my age would pick up one of those old school dial phones, and you see the logo right there on the bottom, the Bell system. Yeah. But apparently, in that case, they were able to break up that company. But like I said, just because you file a lawsuit doesn't mean you're going to be successful. And not just old Trump. Indeed, there were other instances where they tried to break up companies, such as I think it was Hatford Fire Insurance. Supposedly, they were doing bid rigging and stuff like that, and they won their lawsuit. And they had another instance where they had Associate Press, and you say Associate Press, yeah. Apparently, they were sued back in the middle 20th century. Supposedly, supposedly it was because they had bad business practices, something about prohibition on selling spontaneous news and freedom of speech. But in the end, the lawsuit wasn't successful. And then they had a lawsuit against New York NEX company, which didn't go through either. So yeah, just because you file a lawsuit against some of these companies doesn't mean you're going to succeed. And indeed, one of the reasons why is this something I never heard of before. It has to do with something having to do with the Chicago school. And you say, Chicago school? Yeah. Apparently it was primarily written up at the University of Chicago School of Economics. And supposedly there were some really smart cookies there who said that the structural interpretation of U.S. antitrust basically was all basically to reduce prices and limit no barriers. But this guy who ran it at the time, this guy's name was Director. And you say, that sounds like a goofy name. Yeah, I know, but that's the guy's name. Yeah, he argued that economic efficiency and explanations of some practices that may have been condemned as structurally, not allowed. He said that maybe it wasn't necessarily, I think the word he used was that it was basically a happenstance, that it wasn't planned, it just sort of occurred. And you're gonna love this part. Apparently Robert Bork, remember that clown? Yeah. Apparently he was still a college professor over at Yale Law. He seconded the motion. He and this other fellow called Easterbrook. Yeah, they felt that the Chicago School of Economics was right. That sometimes these things just sort of happen; they're not planned. And therefore, what does that mean for this future lawsuit against Google? Well, that's kind of funny because according to the Chicago School of Economics, what happened with Google wasn't necessarily a planned monopoly or even a oligopoly. I think that's how you pronounce it. They said it just sort of happened that way. And I'm thinking, yeah, sure, player. So what does that mean to you and me? Well, I guess it means that if the lawsuit is successful, I guess that means that you don't have to rely on Google anymore for your for primary search engine. You can rely on somebody else, like Ask Jeeves. Oh, that's right, doesn't exist anymore. Or how about Alta Vista? Oh, that's right, doesn't exist anymore either. Dogpile, it still exists. Yeah, you could probably use that. But the thing is, just because this lawsuit may become successful against Google doesn't mean it's going to really mean anything. Because if you go to some of these smaller search engines, I mean, have you ever noticed that when you use them and you get your search results, you can clearly see that they copied and pasted from Google. And then you say, so why'd they do that? I guess it was probably because it was just cheaper. And then you think, oh, yeah. In other words, why you spend the money and resources to build your own index of search results when you just simply borrow one that already exists, namely Google's? Of course, the one that Google's is kind of sucks anyway, because old little Tim Pool, for example, he's complained a lot how if you try to search some of his websites, like like Timcast, for example, it doesn't come up in search results. And I say, yeah, that's kind of fishy. And wait for it, you ready? Remember when Trump almost got murdered? Yeah, by that bullet that some knucklehead thinks didn't exist, that it was what, shrapnel? Remember that nonsense? Yeah. Well, anyone who's used Google recently and tried to, type in, Trump assassination attempt, usually nothing comes up in the autofill. The stupid little, the little place where you actually type in. And more than a few people thought that was fishy. And I'm thinking, yeah. So, yeah, even if this lawsuit is successful against Google, there's no guarantee things are going to change. Indeed, look what happened. Look what's going on over there at X, Twitter. I mean, because old Elon, he bought the company, and yet he's still having problems. I mean, look what just happened recently. In other words, he was supposed to trying to have that conversation with old Trump, and what happens? The servers break down. And of course, some of you say, oh, well, Elon, he's a smart guy, he's a rich guy, he could probably get it fixed. Yeah, he did get it fixed. It took him almost an hour to get it fixed, but he got it fixed. But the question is, this shouldn't have happened in the first place. And then at that point you say, oh, yeah, talking about sabotage? I don't mean the damn old Beastie Boys song either, so just don't go there, okay? Just don't. Yeah. Because more than a few smart people, like that big boy jump from Quarterly, he said that that's one of the main problems with the modern internet, is that it's not so much that you have the companies, like Google, like Amazon, like Microsoft, which also has its own antitrust lawsuit. Remember Netscape? I remember Netscape. Yeah. And they technically lost that case, but think about it. Does Netscape net browser still exist? I haven't seen one on any computer since the George W. era. So it seems like that lawsuit against Microsoft kind of wasn't really that successful, huh? Yeah. I think that's probably the main problem with the modern internet, is that you have a bunch of people in these companies who basically are just set in their ways. They're going to do what they're going to do, and the hell what the law says. And that goes back to Elon Musk. That's why he's having so many problems. I mean, he took over the company, but a lot of the people who were there before are still there. Now you get it? Yeah. So whether or not this lawsuit against Google is successful or not, I think the real problem with Google is the people who work there. I mean, let's not even pretend. You're talking about a $1 trillion company, and breaking it up is just not enough. You have to go in there with basically a big broom and a big dustpan and just sweep out all the garbage. All these people in there, all these middle managers, all these damn people in the IT department, everybody, and just get them out of there. Bring in a whole new crop of people. People who are not going to be sitting there doing a little monkey business with the damn algorithms when they think nobody upstairs in the corner office is looking. Yeah. Because remember the Trump photo? That famous one after he got shot? Remember how it got banned? And not just from Google, but also got banned from Facebook and a couple other places too? That was no accident. That was no whoopsie. No, that was deliberate because of the people who work in that industry. Well, that's all I gotta say about this antitrust Google lawsuit, and whether or not it's gonna mean much of anything in the end. That's my opinion.